the Route 77 podcast and to our exploration of philia from C.S. Lewis's The Four Loves. Join us as we dive into this essence of friendship according to one of literature's greatest minds. Today, we dissect what friendship means beyond the surface, guided by Lewis's timeless wisdom. Join us as we uncover the beauty and complexity of philia, the love that binds us in deep, meaningful connection. Welcome to the Route 77 podcast. I am Natasha, your host, and I am here with Monique.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
So, we talked last week about storge, which was the affectionate love. And this week we will be talking about philia, which is the brotherly love or friendship love.
When you're playing with your nieces and nephews and they're giggling, that's affectionate love. Pillow fight.
It's interesting. Philia or friendship is the second love that's described by Lewis in the book, The Four Loves. And he talks about is that it's the least organic love, I think is what he called it, because he said, or it's the least natural. Yeah. He says it is the least natural of loves, the least instinctive, organic, biological, gregarious, and necessary. It has least commerce with our nerves. There is nothing throaty about it, nothing that quickens the pulse or turns you red and pale. It is essentially between individuals. The moment two men are friends, they have in some degree drawn apart together from the herd. Without eros, none of us would have been begotten, and without affection, none of us would have been reared. But we can live and breed without friendship. So it's not something that is a necessary or it's natural if you look at it from a purely kind of animalistic or evolution perspective, where it's not a type of love that would normally happen,
right?
If without being pursued. And I think that's so interesting because we in this day and age we've lost the art of friendship love. This, I think it was in the 60s. It's one of the last books he wrote. 1960 was when he published this book. So if you think about the 60s or just coming from the 50s into the 60s, like what culture would have been like then, we would have said now that we've moved much farther away from even the people that they were. And yet, from his perspective, this was an art that was lost.
Yeah. That's interesting because when it comes to friendship, it's not common, especially among men, to use the word love to describe their friendships. We hear about Jonathan and David in the Bible. They were like soulmates. And in case you didn't know, Jonathan was 15 years older at least than David. So it was a brother-uncle kind of relationship. It wasn't anything other than that. But we don't hear about that this day and age. Men don't connect like that. And women rarely connect like that too. Some may say, yeah, she's my best friend and we do everything together. But for me, it's really hard for me to say, I love you, my friends. It just feels awkward. It feels awkward.
That's because society switched the definitions around. They now correlate love with romantic love, sexual expectations than what we're reading.
And because even like our own selves as Christians, we know in our heads that this is a true love, the friendship love. And we see it in Jonathan and David. And yet when we read the verse from 1 Samuel 18, verse 1, it says, after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. Even our own perspective, we have a hard time seeing that not as something sexual because we've been so programmed to see those responses as that, right? And it's hard to take a step back
and say that's got nothing to do with anything like that. Yeah.
So like one of the other things he talks about this significant section, but I think it's good to read. It says, but then came romanticism and tearful comedy and the return to nature and the exaltation of sentiment. And in their train, all the great wallow of emotion, which, though often criticized, has lasted ever since. Finally, the exaltation of instinct, the dark gods in the blood, whose hierophants may be incapable of male friendship. Under this new dispensation, all that had once commended this love now began to work against it. It had not tearful smiles and keepsakes and baby talk enough to please the sentimentalist. There was not blood and guts enough about it to attract the primitivist. It looked thin and teolated. So new words. Anyway,
what the heck word is that?
A sort of vegetarian substitute for the more organic loves. Other causes have contributed to those, and they are now the majority, who see life merely as a development and complication of animal life. All forms of behavior which cannot produce certificates of an animal origin or of the survival value are suspect. Friendship's certificates are not very satisfactory. Again, that outlook which values the collective above the individual necessarily disparages friendship. It is a relation between men at their highest level of individuality. It withdraws men from collective togetherness, as surely as solitude itself could do. And more dangerously, for it withdraws them by twos and threes. Some form of democratic sentiment are naturally hostile to it because it is selective and an affair of the few. To say these are my friends implies those are not. For all these reasons, if a man believes, as I do, that the old estimate of friendship was the correct one, he can hardly write a chapter on it except as a rehabilitation. This imposes on me at the outset a very tiresome bit of demolition. It has actually become necessary in our time to rebut the theory that every firm and serious friendship is really homosexuals. And he does say he talks more about men being friends with men because that's his experience. He says that he doesn't have experience of women being friends with women to understand how their minds work with it.
Yeah. But we can see it.
But we see it definitely in this day and age where it can be friendship between the same gender or even with the opposite gender. It's constantly misconstrued as must be sexual.
Yeah. But even in opposite gender relationship, there tends to always be one person in that relationship that considers the other person, and always, I've had that. You're just my friend. Then they start coming on to me and I'm like, what are you doing? You were my friend and now you're not.
And he actually does talk about that near the end of the chapter. I don't have it specifically here, but he actually talks about how either in a opposite gendered relationship, that there has a tendency for at least one person to misconstrue friendship as eros.
Yeah.
And or develops from friendship into eros for both of them.
Right.
So there has a tendency towards one of those two things when it is opposite gender.
Right.
Friendship. It doesn't mean that for every single one, but there's a tendency to drift. Like one person misconstrues it and thinks there's something like eros about it, or it becomes that because they connect over time.
And it can happen even in same-sex relationships when one person has that tendency to be attracted toward. So friendship can be a very tricky road to walk on if you don't have the boundaries in place.
It's hard because if we haven't, as a society, understood that there is friendship relationships that are very strong in love, then if you don't even consider that as a possibility, then you're going to either go, wait, is this person coming on to me? Thinking that they're doing something and that really they're just being friends, or you're responding to it, or it becomes something that did honestly start as a friendship, but then became more.
Changed. It's a funny road to walk on, isn't it?
Yes. And because we've lost this.
Well, and this is probably why so many people, rather than having those close friendships, seek to find the spouse friendship. But a lot of times, like in a relationship, whether it's girlfriend, boyfriend, marriage, whatever, you're not going to be able to fulfill that person's hobbies and stuff. Like if your husband loves to watch football and you can't stand the game, are you going to choke through it just to be his?
And he actually talks about those specific things in this chapter one, because again, we're talking about different like cultural times.
Yep.
But he actually talks about forcing your spouse to try to be your friend and bringing them into friend groups and situations where they have zero interest.
Yep.
And he says there's nothing more foolish looking than, he specifically talks about women trying, because they react to a situation differently than men when they're unsure about it, but there's nothing more foolish than a woman trying to feign interest in something she has absolutely no interest in. Men who are trying to be pushed by the women to become part of the women's group have a tendency to be more like passively like assertive about not becoming involved. Like there's a passiveness more about it. So he just doesn't become involved. And there's this idea that like, I'm marrying my best friend and we're going to do everything together and we don't need any other friends. And that's not healthy.
That's not that healthy stuff.
So if you think
it's not to say that there's not going to be times when you're going to have interests that are
aligned. Yeah.
Like my late husband and I, we love to read. So there were times where we would just sit and we would just read all day, drink tea and read all day. That was great. We would go for drives because we like going for drives. But there were definitely a lot of things that, I just know.
And Lewis points out that the tendency is that you want to keep your spouse from having the same gendered friends. Like men having men friends, women having women friends, because then they're taking away from your relationship by having time with the guys or having a girls' night.
Nothing pleased me more than when he said, I'm going out with the guys. Bye. How long are you going to be gone? 3 days? Yes. I got the house to myself. Right. Maybe I'm just not made for marriage.
Maybe there's an aspect when there's person's abusive too. That you're just happy that they're gone.
You're happy that they're gone because then the stress is gone too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you actually understand that that's a different relationship, a friendship relationship that can be completely strong and full and loving, but it's different than the relationship that you'll have with your spouse, which is the eros, which can include some of the friendship love as well. Yeah.
Wouldn't it include everything?
You would hope so. But I don't know if people, other than saying the thing, there's people that have that like idea, even if they don't even think it through, they assume once you're dating seriously or you're married that you're exclusive to one another. But then will friendship thrive in that type of, and it will if the friendship love of your relationship thrive, if that's the requirement.
And if you're using the dating experience as a litmus test for what it's going to be like in your marriage, to impress each other.
And plus there's a lot of hormones going on.
Yeah.
You're at eros high.
And then you get married and real life sets in. It's just not that way. You can't live in that high state forever because it's exhausting.
Yeah. And I find it interesting too. He says that those who cannot conceive friendship as a substantive love, but only as a disguise or an elaboration of eros, betray the fact that they have never had a friend. The rest of us know that though we can have erotic love and friendship for the same person, yet in some ways nothing is less like a friendship than a love affair. Lovers are always talking to one another about their love, friends hardly ever about their friendship. Lovers are normally face to face, absorbed in each other. Friends are side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Above all, eros, while it lasts, is necessarily between two only, but two, far from being the necessary number for friendship, is not even the best. And he goes on to give an example that's really interesting, that you actually need, and he's not saying you need like millions of friends, but you actually need a bigger friend group than one other person to fully appreciate each individual person. Because what I bring out in Monique and what David brings out in Monique are two different things.
Yep.
And if David suddenly decided never to have anything to do with us again, because he would never do that. But if he did,
that's it. I've had nothing.
He's decided to join a military and become like, and just have a vow of like
silence.
Then what would happen is that I would lose that dynamic of what David brings out in Monique. Lewis actually gives the example that the person died. I didn't want to put that on David, so I just said he joined a monastery. So that was a little better than that.
I've got that sort of thing because my best friend Michelle, who I've known since I was 12 years old, we're still friends to this day, but she's now gotten married. So her life has taken on a different turn. When she met Dan, that was it. Didn't exist anymore.
But she's also still on the eros high.
Yes.
Because it's been coming and going with your mom and stuff like that. How long has she been married now? Like a year?
Has it been a year already, or is it going up to a year?
So romantic love can last up to 2 years. So when she comes down off that high, then you might connect a little differently again. It's just that originally it can last up to 2 years. That's the science behind it.
But I have other friends Shauna, that I've known since I was 6. Her and I are still really good friends, but we don't talk as much. She's busy with her life. I'm busy with my life. And then I've got people that I know in church But I work 6 days a week, so it's really
It's hard. So
then I think our relationship has become central now.
Yeah.
Because we live together for one, and then because of that community living, it's really, wanna go? Okay, we'll go out.
We'll do stuff
Yeah.
but I think if something happened to one of us and we're no longer here, there would be this huge gap.
Yeah.
And we're still not gonna go around like kissing each other on the cheek and hugging like crazy.
Yeah.
There's like a 21st century way of showing the love. Usually it's lots of jibes and teasing and emojis.
laughing.
And emojis and memes. That's the new way of
But why?
We talk about a lot of things, and we stay up really late.
What did you ask, David?
I'm just contemplating what moment altered it in such a way that it flipped it is on its head. Why do we perceive things as this way now when others didn't then? Why would that change?
How we show love?
Yeah, okay. For example, how we would show love. Why would it change from say 1920 to
And I think it has a lot to do with worldview.
Yeah.
And the fact that
but then why did the worldview change? That's what I'm contemplating. Why are these things changing? And
yet
why
look back and see the change.
if they weren't right in the past, why didn't they change sooner? If what we see now isn't right, then why did people didn't stop it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big philosophical discussion there. The main worldview, the non-Christian worldview, is that as a society, we're always on an upward path to becoming more and more civilized. So whatever we did in the past, we've learned from it and we've gotten better. We've progressive. So we progressed to a higher standard, a higher whatever. But as like a Christian perspective, I think we see more of a cyclical. If you look in history, you see like the trends of things becoming acceptable and then stuff happens, God punishes nations, and there's a revival of sorts and people come to God, and we come right back around this cycle, and we see it through history of the Bible. We see it through Israel, we see it through the New Testament, we see it through church history.
We just see it through society.
And yet we don't know, we can see it in the past and yet are helpless to see it in our own current situation.
Yeah.
Because
we are seeing it now because now it like in the past, hundreds of years when everything was permissible, you could do whatever you wanted, act however you wanted, be whatever you wanted. But you saw that kind of what they call free living eventually cause the collapse of that society. And we are heading in the same direction because now we're having the same kind of thing where this is right, that's right, everything is right. You can have this, that, and the other person whenever you want. But we are seeing that society is starting to collapse again. And it's just a matter of time before it happens. Then we're all going to have to reevaluate what our thoughts and morals are. Right now, society outside of Christianity does not believe in morals because
everything is self-truth.
Yeah, everything is self-truth.
Everything they believe in subjective morals.
And I think we see this, how it's really affected friendship by the whole friends with benefits idea, because we've created this class of friendship that is indistinguishable from the eros in a sense where even though in theory, the eros part is not supposed to be in it, it still is.
Yeah.
And we've made it where it's impossible to have that super serious, close friendship without that part of it. That's the next step of friendship.
Yeah.
You like your friends and then you're friends with benefit.
Yeah. You're my friend to help me with my itch.
Yeah. And that's the next level of friendship.
Yeah.
That's the expected stepping stone for what friendship is. And it's very disturbing. That's the expectation.
Yeah. So a lot of girls and guys avoid getting too close in a relationship. So you can have multiple acquaintances.
Yeah.
But if you were to really ask, do you have anybody who is like close friend that you would confide in when you're having struggles or a difficult time? Do we really have that? Do you have a friend like that, David?
Sorry, I missed the last part. What?
A friend that you would consider to be close, so close a friendship that you could share your deepest, darkest thoughts and not worry about their thoughts or judgments. I'm talking about a guy friend.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that.
Well,
What
really,
ends up what and
only for the women.
what ends up happening more often than not is if we confide, then it becomes an inside joke. But there are things that depend on how deep it is. If it's a serious thing related to friends or family, then it's respected. We either don't talk about it at all, or we just understand and let the person be. More often than not, there doesn't need to be words spoken. We can tell, depending on the mood,
Mm.
how they respond. We don't take anything personally. If they respond to us in a rude kind of way, then we reflect on what has happened in the past or what they revealed to us. We don't hold anything personal or grudges or we're like, okay, he's in this kind of mood, probably doesn't want to be talked to right now, so we'll leave him alone. But depending on how deep it is, we get mocked or made fun of, or they make it worse just because what I've observed is the closer you are to a friend, the more they're going to make it worse. Well, guys.
And this is why you should all have friends, according to David. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Well, you see, like
But yeah, it's different.
young, like grade school kids, they make friends. They do friends really well.
Mhm.
This is probably why Jesus says, "Be like little children."
Yeah.
Because they don't care. They don't care who you are, where you come from, how much money you make. They don't care about that kind of thing. They just want to know, are you willing to be my friend and let's play together? Let's build blocks, let's
Yeah.
play whatever. And we
He says that he's basically you become friends the moment you go, oh, you like that too? I thought I was the only one. And then you're friends. And he talks about how people to meet. But if you weren't in that place and time and said those words or whatever, there's a lot of coincidences that happen in order for people to really become good friends.
Yeah. And as a Christian, we call
We-
them God
God
instances.
instances or
Yeah.
yeah, like where God was obviously moving things so that we
Yeah.
came together. But yeah, if you look at it, like there's a reason why you do other things. You put yourself in a place, you do this, you do that. You were born into it, whatever. But with friendship, it just happens like almost randomly. You'll say it was random how we became friends.
Yep.
And how many people say that it was so random? And then we'll say some random thing that happened that became like that. Why you become friends? And if any,
But really, was it random?
yeah,
Like with us, it was random.
yeah, it was totally random.
Had I not gone to that Taekwondo studio, we would have never met. I really wanted to go. So
Yeah, and then with
even though
Korea happening, it's just
realizing that we actually got along
I know.
just by that. Even when we're just in Taekwondo, we were just in
but
casual.
It was
yeah.
just casual, and then even with David, yeah, it was casual. We're just like, hey, we see each other a couple times a week, and that was it. But then that Korea trip really just clinched it for
Yeah.
the family feeling of friendship, like just the higher level of friendship. That's not with benefits.
Yes, thank you very much. No, thank you.
We're
No
just
benefits.
friends, no benefits included. It always
Yeah.
sounds really horrible because you're like, it's friends, but with no benefits. You're like, but why are you friends with that person if there's absolutely no benefit to being their friend? And you're like, it's not like that. Not a benefit. There's no benefits, but there's a benefit, but no benefits.
That sounds like dog food, isn't that?
So I actually had ChatGPT come up with a quick analysis of friendship over
We
time.
digress.
We digress. Yes, it was a really funny game. Shout out to
Shout out
Mr.
to
Greg.
Mr. Gregisms.
TikTok and Gregism. Here's a brief history of the term or the idea of friendship. In classical antiquity, in ancient Greece, the word for friend, philos, had a broad meaning encompassing love and affection in various contexts. Similarly, the Latin amicus signified more than just a casual friendship, often implying a bond with social and political ramifications. Medieval times, the concept of friendship was heavily influenced by Christian thought, particularly the writings of philosophers like Augustine, who emphasized spiritual and moral dimensions of friendship. The Old English friend was used in literature and religious texts, signifying a bond of mutual affection and loyalty, which doesn't even sound like the full friend, like philo, that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Renaissance Enlightenment friendship continued to be a topic of philosophical inquiry, with thinkers like Montaigne discussing its ethical and personal significance. The term began to denote a more personal, individualized relationship, reflecting broader societal shifts towards individualism. 18th and 19th centuries, the Romantic movement further elevated the emotional aspects of friendship, celebrating the ideal of deep platonic bonds. Literature from the period is rich with depictions of friendship as noble, elevating relationships. So it sounds like it was really thriving in the 18th and 19th centuries. Then in the mid-20th century, as societies became more mobile and fragmented, the nature of friendship began to reflect more diverse social realities, including cross-cultural and intergenerational friendships. The term expanded to include wider ranges of affiliations. So it's becoming more types of friendship, or like becoming watering it down. Late 20th century, the advent of the internet and digital communication began to transform the concept of friendship, introducing terms like online friends and expanding the notion of community and connection beyond physical presence. In the 21st century, social media platforms have further broadened the definition of friend, often blurring the lines between acquaintances, followers, and true friends. The term now encompasses a spectrum of relationships from intimate, lifelong bonds to more casual digital connections. And I think that's true. Like, we've really cheapened the word friend.
Yes.
It's become like a penny, not a Canadian penny because those are rare.
Non-existent almost.
How about nickels? There we go. It's like nickels. You come upon one on the street,
It's not a
big
thing.
deal. Because our friends are a dime a dozen. How many friends do you have on Facebook? How many followers? How many on Instagram? And you'll be like, yeah, they're my friend on Instagram, or they're my friend on Twitter.
Do the kids even do Facebook? I think it's
An old people thing.
It's an old thing now.
Facebook, like, who has Facebook? Like, come on, TikTok. The Facebook's like way old. I was before Facebook. Don't even with me. Okay, there you go.
My mom's email address is still msn.com.
My very first email address was go.com.
I keep coming across those. It was like me.com. There was a me.com. I want a me.com.
But yeah, so like the term friend has been so cheapened that to call someone a friend, it's like you have to qualify all the time. It's like my best friend, or like we're such good friends. We're like sisters. Like you have to qualify it in such a way that, like, is it an acquaintance? Is it someone you've never met but just happen to be on? Like, so I'll actually say it's an online friend or a friend from a game.
Yeah.
And now we're friends on Facebook. So that relationship went from just a game to Facebook. So I actually have more interaction in her life than I did before. A couple of ladies from a game I used to play where I've actually had conversations with them and things like that. And yet that's a different friendship than what we have.
I have one girl on my Facebook page. She actually lives close by in Port Coquitlam. And we met on a game, one of those really old, like, this is a computer game where you're building castles and you have fights and stuff like that. You storm the castle kind of thing. What years? Must have been like 2006.
But ancient.
Ancient. I know. You know what the graphics were like? But she is still on my Facebook page and we still interact every now and then. I have another friend that I met through when Beauty and the Beast was airing. I've got a couple of them still, one in Holland and this one who lives across the border, Washington. And when she was living in Seattle, I'd gone to visit her a couple of times. She actually won me a ticket to go see Shiny, which was so cool. But now she moved to Sequim. And Sequim, even though it's closer to the Canadian border, it's actually a farther drive to get to, because now I got to take a ferry. So that's going to require a little bit more.
But it's interesting how we've taken these online friends through a shared interest. And then it became more because of that shared interest.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like some random person you're like, I'm going to be friends with you, and just pick and just random person and became friends with them.
Yeah.
There was a shared interest that started it. And then it can develop into something that's much bigger. And we have this ability to do this now because you could do this. You could do that down across the border, but you could be across the world. And eventually there are people who actually go and meet. And
yes, I did. I met through that fan group of Beauty and the Beast. There was a group that I met in Calgary. And then when I went to Holland, there was a bunch that I met there as well. We all went to Belgium, had lunch and walked around. So you can, and a couple of them I am still in contact with. But it's amazing how social media has connected people from around the world. We call them our online friends.
Yeah. And they can develop into something bigger, but we've lost the real meaning of the word, I think. In the 18th, 19th century, it was really celebrated.
Yeah.
The fact that you have friendship. Try to find a movie now or TV series. That's why I always push Psych, because I love the fact that they were two best friends. They were just really awesome friends, and it just makes me laugh like every time I watch it. And it's lighthearted. But one other show, it's always romance related.
Yeah.
Romantic
or
comedy.
eventually it becomes, it's just
They're
now they
two
ruined
people
the show.
that were friends and now they're more than friends, because that's what has to happen. That's the next step. Especially if they're opposite gendered.
Yeah.
They're like, that's the next step in a relationship, friends to arrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, not all things have to do that.
Yep.
And yeah, I think nowadays you could even come across characters that is just pure friendship. When we watched Doctor Who with David Tennant, that was the draw for the Donna character, was that she didn't have romantic feelings for him as opposed to the other companions. And
What about Amy?
yeah, and Amy did originally, but now there's a really good
Because
friendship.
you see the conflict. She loves her guy husband, but she's also
Yeah, but then it's changed because she realized she loved her husband so much, or at the time, fiance.
But I think the doctor, he looks at her and I was like, what are your feelings really? Step away.
So it's hard to find those characters
It
now
is.
to see the really good friendships.
Stargate had that.
And that's one thing I loved about Stargate. There was like 10% was like interpersonal relationships, and the 90% was the fun stuff in the show.
Yeah.
Now we flip that. So it's so heavy into interpersonal relationships. You're like, I don't even want my drama. Why do I want yours? Like, I came in here to see you kick bad guys' butts. That's pretty much why I came in.
And all I'm watching is you trying to make a
Touch each other's butts. I'm like, no. Yeah, it's just, yeah. Let me find my place again. We talk about it.
Now that was the digital, but now we're into the Christian content.
Yeah.
So we talked about David and Jonathan. There's also Ruth and Naomi. Even though they were mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, it was still that same dynamic where she didn't care to run off to go and get married. She wanted to stay with her mother-in-law regardless of whether she ever got married again or not.
Yeah, she loved her mother-in-law. But we could also see it more of the Storge love there too, because it was mother-daughter. She didn't have her own mother anymore, and it's hard to say, but I think that David and Jonathan one is like really
But even Jesus and his disciples,
that's the one that a lot of people go, oh, Jesus was gay because he kissed his disciples. He had favorite ones and he loved his one the most or whatever. And you're like, oh my word, really? It was, frustrating because
yes, he was
culture
human,
is
God, and that was not part of.
and there's cultural ways of showing love and friendship then versus now, or even in the Middle Eastern culture versus North American culture is very different.
I think their way of showing friendship is definitely different than us in the West. And I hear that frequently because of the cultures and the way they are. That
or
we
like
do.
aversions to the
It's whether if I'm watching my Korean or Chinese dramas, I will see like girls that they'll hug and kiss each other. That's all that is. Like they'll hold each other's arms walking down the street.
Yeah, like it'll be in a way not
normal.
It's not in a gay manner.
No.
But and you know that when you're watching the episode. But if you do that in a North American one, it means something different. Usually.
And then it feels awkward and weird, and we've lost that.
We've lost that ability to show. And for people who show love in a physical manner, that's detrimental to them. And love doesn't have to be eros. You can show your love in different ways.
Yep, absolutely. Well, yeah, we're friends, but we've got this line in the sand. And that only works when we're not upset.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of what C.S. Lewis was talking about with friendship love, just how it's like a lost art. One of the things he talked about is that we have a hard time understanding it because we don't see it exemplified in the Bible as much, because we see storge love as God as our father, and we see eros love as in Jesus is the bridegroom of the church, but they're symbols of something. And C.S. Lewis talks about the fact that friendship, it's hard to make it symbolic because it will look too much like the real thing. If you tried to make God friend, then you would see God as friend and not the representations. Like God as lover, you see it as a representation. Is God as a father, you see it as a representation. Like God as friend, it's not like the same representation. You see it as the actual thing and not a representative.
Like those people say, yeah, he's my buddy.
He's my buddy. And I'm just like, wow, I couldn't. No, it doesn't mean he doesn't love me or that I don't have, but it's just not the state.
No, I have that. To me, to call him like my buddy, like I'll call him my friend, but it's a different connotation.
It's more like
his reverence is still here.
If I was in Korea, I'd be using definitely all the yo on the end. all the courtesy,
Yep. The courtesy words.
the courtesy words. They would
Yep.
definitely not be like they're the same level as me friendship words. Like
Yep.
I would not be saying "안녕" to God. I'd be like "안녕하세요, 안녕하십니까," like saying it with like
The full reverent
reverent
kind of
way, and
respect. Yeah.
because that's what you do. So it would never be the same level,
Right.
ever.
Right. Yeah. Because to call him your friend as a call to buddy, you could tell the different connotation just in the sound of it. So it's the same kind of thing because he is the friend of our soul. He is the lover of our soul. He gave himself up for us. Like it says here, no greater love has one than to lay down his life for his
Right.
friends, right?
Yeah,
So it was like,
yeah.
he did that. I
But he
would
still.
probably have a harder time. Oh, I'm sorry. No.
I fist bump. No, I don't know. It would just be. I don't know. It's. It'd be like if Grandmaster Chang were, "Hey, high five," and it would just be like,
Whoa, that's
"No,
wrong.
you just can't do that. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry." That's you'd be like bowing. That's what you do. You like, yeah, okay.
Because
It-
he's
Just yeah. So I was like trying to
even with Master Bozang, I have a hard.
there's like a in the dojang, and then outside is slightly better, but there's always that.
that he's.
I can't just
still-
say Jose.
No.
If
I'm
I'm
conflicted though, because
Sorry,
he
what?
also wants a personal relationship. What you're describing, there isn't like a personal relationship that you would expect to have with what the Bible, as with the people, as the relationship you're describing. It's like
Yeah.
a mentor. He's like a mentor. But at the same time, you it expresses how he wants to have a personal relationship like you would do with a friend.
and with his disciples.
So
I have-
the best way I could describe that is the relationship between you and I, Natasha.
Yeah.
We are friends, but also you're my teacher at Taekwondo.
And so it's like there's this power dynamic is a little different.
Mhm.
And in a sense.
Yeah.
It's hard to really describe it because you're totally right, David. Like God wants this personal relationship. He would be the one like the footprints in the sand, there's the
Carrying
reason
you.
there was one set of footprints is because I was carrying you. Jesus would be the first one to come and cover you with his body to hug you in your grief,
protection and
do all the things that a true friend would do. And yet to call him
my buddy.
direction.
If
If that's even a real wording phrase, but that's how it feels.
makes my skin feel weird. It just doesn't feel right. And it doesn't mean that I love him less or that I think he loves me less.
Or that
It's-
he's so far above me that we can't possibly have a relationship that's personal.
No, but it's still that understanding that he is a holy God. And
And
it's still,
God understood that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
That
I think it's a,
Friend was Jesus.
Yeah.
So then now we don't feel so distant at the same.
no, there's the song I Could Only Imagine by Mercy Me. He talks about when I stand in your presence, what will I feel?
And when you try to imagine, which you can't, we can only imagine,
We can only imagine.
but it's like to imagine it like to do anything but
Fall on
fall
my
on
face.
your face. It's like it doesn't seem possible.
I can't
Like-
envision myself not having tears pouring out of my
Yeah.
eyes, my face planted on the
And
ground.
feel not worthy of.
Yeah. And I have also at times when I've been really badly hurting, all I could do is imagine myself in
huddled
his
a
embrace.
ball, just being hugged by Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's what I think when they talk about Aslan in that language of Morjob, and they're like, is it scary to go see Aslan? They're like, hey, if a man doesn't go up and fall down or has his knees knocking, he's either like braver than most or just plain stupid. And they says, but he is good.
Yeah.
And like, even if you watch like this, and like the old BBC version or the newer versions, I guess, or listen to it or read the book, like you always have that feel for Aslan that he like loves you within your soul. Like I managed to do that with this little like animatronic puppet thing in the 80s. You actually felt that with watching him. And yet Aslan, it's like you are a friend, but not a friend. It's this weird dynamic, but it's amazing.
Yeah. It's really hard to describe.
It is. We will try not to do too much more describing. It's so out of the
because people are sitting there going, guys,
Wait,
got no
what?
idea
What?
what. No, it's good. Really, it's great.
So just remember that, so that just brings us to the end of our podcast on friendship, love, and that really good to talk about these different things to understand, because we often say love and it's a general term and we don't often nuance it.
Yep.
And C.S. Lewis does an amazing job really nuancing it, because I think he was, what does this mean? And then really went to town and trying to figure out what it meant. And
So if you're in that situation where you find yourself, you don't have a spouse, you don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're wanting to find friends, there are online groups called like Meetup. That's where a group of people get together and do like-minded things. So if you like hiking, there's hiking groups. If you like tennis, there's tennis groups. If you like basketball, there's basketball groups. If you like
filming, there's
filming,
there's anything you can think of,
photographs,
people.
whatever your interests are, there are groups of people that like to get together. Like maybe you want to be in a reading group where you all read a book and then discuss the book. There are groups like that too. So you don't sit there. There are places where you can find friends, and you never know who you might meet. Had I not walked into the Taekwondo studio, we would never have met, would never been in this situation where we were able to do podcasting, where we could go and travel.
Just companionship. It's just crazy what can happen.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend friendship.
Yeah.
Love. Friendship, love. Not just like online friends.
Yeah.
People that you can count on your little Facebook number.
Yeah. And a lot of times we'll go out for dinner and we'll be sitting there and we'll be just scrolling through our phones before dinner arrives. But once dinner arrives, we put our phones down and then we're interacting.
Yeah. And usually when we're on our phones, we're like sharing memes and stuff with each other anyway.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
look at this one. Look at this one.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Half the time you have, because for some reason we're on the same stupid Facebook.
We're on the same thing. We're the same wavelength, everything. It's just...
And those are the best kind of friends, is when you have a friend who's on the same wavelength as you and you can share the same kind of stupid. We have new housemates, 2 girls from India. They are lovely girls.
Awesome girls.
They are so fun. And they met in the same way. They totally different places, but they met in Ontario working for the same daycare center and became friends. And now they've moved here to Abbotsford to branch out and to do things here. They're just friends.
Just friends.
And
just is quotation. Just.
Yes. And just is it just
quotation, air quotes? Just,
just
friends. But not like in a...
those are rabbit ears.
Rabbit ears? Just because
they're
just the rabbits on either side of your sentence?
They are rabbits on the other side of my sentence.
Okay.
Little bunny food.
Now I will never forget that. That will be forever. They will forever be rabbit ears. And people will be wondering what I'm talking about.
Rabbit ears. Just because I'm weird.
And we're all the same kind of weird.
Yep. And this is how you have fun in friendships. Yep.
If you have friends, let us know. Any kind of friends. Just let us know. Are we your friends? Just let us know.
Are we your friends?
We just want to know if anyone's listening.
Can I be your friend?
Are you going to be our friends? I know. I'm so desperate. Are we...
celebrate your friends.
Yeah, celebrate them. Go find them. Hug them. Give them a kiss on big cheek, each of the cheeks, because it will shock the daylights out of them.
That's how the Dutch greet.
Sure.
You kiss one, you kiss the other cheek, and that's how you greet.
Just go kissing your bright cheeks.
And you can just do an air kiss. You don't even have
don't even look posh if you just don't even have a contact. David's just standing away from the computer right now because he doesn't want any air kisses.
Do not send me any air kisses. It sounds like I'm calling the dog.
This is why we do the podcasts online.
As our journey through C.S. Lewis's exploration of friendship concludes, we're reminded of the enduring power of philia. Lewis shows us that true friendship is a treasure, enriching our lives in ways nothing else can. Let's cherish our friendships, those deep bonds that sustain and uplift us. Share your reflections on philia with us, and until next time, nurture those friendships and remember to live your single life to its fullest.